Joining me this morning to talk a little bit about some of the things going on with San Juan County as we record a program to air during spring break. So today it is March the 9th. But joining me here in Studio A to talk a little bit about their work is County Manager Mike Stark. Mr. Stark, good morning and welcome back to KSJE.
Good morning, Scott. Thanks for having us. Always good to be here.
You bet. Good to have you here. And also joining us here in the studio is County Commissioner from District 2, Gary McDaniel. Commissioner McDaniel, welcome to KSJE. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good morning. Buenos dias. Yate bena. However you want to say it. It's a good morning.
There you are. Very good. It's great to have you here. And, gosh, you're one of the newer commissioners, right?
Yes,
this
sir.
time around, just being sworn in January, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you have a long history of public service, I know, in the area. We were talking about that before we came on the air. You, of course, following in the footsteps of your late wife, who we all had much appreciation for and
Right.
enjoyed working with, but she represented District 2 for a number of years too, right?
She did. She represented it well, and we still get comments about people that miss her, and as we all do. God rest her soul. But she represented her constituents well, and if I do half as well as she did, I'll be happy.
Okay. Well, we might hold you to that, but I bet you'll do a little bit better than that.
Thank you. She's a hard act to follow, and let me preface it by saying that she was going to run for this again, and as you know, she got cancer and subsequently died, but she was going to run for this position again, so she'd probably be sitting here instead of me, and doing a better job.
I don't know about that, but we're glad that you are here following in her footsteps and representing the residents of District 2.
Thank you.
And I think that's been for both you and your wife, the pinnacle and what you both have kind of run about is representing those interests on the county commission.
Right. Well, we love people. We love to help and try to make the situation better, and I think at this stage of the game, as far as, being a county commissioner or a judge as I was, I don't consider myself a politician, and she didn't either. We're just in it to help people and do what we can to improve the situation and serve our, fellow man. So that's what it's all about. It's trying to help somebody else, and with God's love, and that's a big part of what we did was, we try to serve with basically WWJD. What would Jesus do?
There you go.
Anyway, we sure love to meet people and help others.
Sure. And you mentioned a little bit about your experience as a judge recently, and also you have some law enforcement experience too. I don't think folks can forget about that. But it's been a few years.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I've worn a lot of hats in my life. A lot of experience. I think I can glean from for this job here. I grew up here, and I was a El Paso natural gas brat, and I know a little bit about the gas fields, and I did work in them for a little bit and have experience there, and I've done a lot of different things. I was a school teacher for a while. I taught, civics and street law, and anyway, but my major career, the one that was actually my career, was in law enforcement, and I had over 33 years here. Retired with the sheriff's office a while back, and I was a judge throughout the years, and first I was an alternate municipal judge in Aztec, and then later on as a magistrate for a few years, and that all kind of puts together a scenario where you're well versed, I would think, in public service, and a lot of life's experiences you can draw from, and it's all good. I've met some great people along the way, and anyway, it's all been good.
Very good. Well, I think we appreciate your public service and all the things that you have done in your career. And I know you're not done yet because you're on the county commission for a new term, right?
Right.
So,
well, yeah.
there you are.
I'm kind of going on a listening tour here. I have to shut my mouth and listen for a while and see what I can learn. Being the new wrangler on the ranch, But anyway, I'm learning quite a bit,
But you have a lot of firsthand knowledge, and pardon me for interrupting, but from your experience as a judge and from law enforcement, I would say when we hear about crime or other things or troubles that families are having or things like that, I would think that experience that you've had gave you a kind of a first-person look at some of these issues that are facing individuals and families here in San Juan County, no matter what district they live in.
Yes, sir. Some of it hasn't come up yet, but it could over the, of course, of my office. But recently we had a couple of sheriff's people in the meeting recently, and they talked about some things I was familiar with, as far as like a simulator for training. And,
sure.
Command module, and we're going to share it with the fire department too, which is great, I think. So different things like that that I got a little bit of experience with, but I'm sure some other things will come up that I can probably, shed some light on, and hopefully I'll make some good common sense decisions. I don't know it all, but I try to consider everybody's feelings and what's best for everybody.
Right, and working with your fellow commissioners, I guess, too, right?
Man.
Because you need to have some maybe consensus or some healthy debate about things that come before the county commission.
Right, exactly. So I'm very fortunate to have Mr. Stark here. We are fortunate, I should say, to have him. He's a great county manager. He's a wealth of information. And other county commissioners that I work with are phenomenal. So we're pretty fortunate here in San Juan County to have the group of people that we do. It's just very humbling, and I can't say enough about them.
There you go. Well, that's very true. And we always hear, at least in my experience when I'm hosting the show, the cooperation between the entities in this part of our state, whether you're at the county level or at the municipal level or even just regionally, working together to try to get things done. And I've seen that myself over the years. I imagine you have too, right? That
Right.
Folks maybe don't depend on others to help out, but just figure, we're in this together and we got to kind of join forces if we
Right.
want to move things forward.
Right. Well, we're all in this together, and the networking is very good. You meet other county commissioners and managers from around the state, things like that. I'm glad you mentioned that. I lost my train of thought here, but anyway.
Talking about cooperation and working
Yeah.
together, right?
Right, working together. And what I was going to say was, I guess I'm known as the road commissioner because the District 2 has a lot of roads and unpaved roads, and some of them, have a little bit of gravel on them, different things like that. But we have about, was it, Mike, 430-some miles in...
Within your district,
Yeah.
out of
Just
a
your
total
district.
of approximately 750 county maintained
Okay.
road miles.
750 miles in the county, and about 430 are, what I'm, what I'm responsible for, or try to help improve. So that's a big part of it. District 1 has some of those, and District 2 is a huge district also, and just a lot of non-paved roads that we deal with. And as you know, the weather recently has been pretty bad, and so they have concerns out there, and as we all do. But what I was going to say was we all drive the same roads. It doesn't matter what political party you're from or whatever. We all drive the same roads, so we can make improvements wherever we go, hopefully. And one thing about that is sometimes the employees are spread kind of thin. We have so many employees and so many maintainers or road graders, if you will.
Right.
So they're spread kind of thin sometimes, but they do a great job for what we have and working within the budget and everything. They go the extra mile, try to keep people safe and everything.
Very true. Well, and we know the size of our county,
Man, yeah.
the size of a state, and the size of Connecticut.
That's
that's a
right.
lot of roads. That's a lot of
That's-
miles and a lot of rural roads to
man,
maintain and make available for folks who need to use them to get to work
Right.
or school or home or whatever, right?
Yes, sir. We have wide open spaces and a lot of roads, and we're thankful for the roads. Some are better than others, but some people don't understand that the difference between a non-county maintained road and a maintained road. The sign color, and we do what we can. So anyway, we have a great crew.
And you're okay with people picking up the phone and calling you if they have a concern about their
absolutely.
road, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I want to bring in Mike Stark to the conversation here.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to say too many more nice things about him, or else he's never going to come back and
We may have to give him a raise.
Well, yeah, I don't know. That's going to be your issue, Mr. Commissioner McDaniel. But Mike Stark, great to have you here, of course, always, county manager. Talk about some of the things, as Commissioner McDaniel was talking about, the maintenance of county roads, and we know we've got a lot of them out there. Some are county maintained, but some are not. There's an important distinction there.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility that we have, and the challenge is, of course, we're spread out, large geographical area, and trying to mobilize equipment just to get to some of these roads is a challenge, and then to have enough qualified operators, that's certainly been a challenge through time, and COVID didn't make that challenge any easier, to try to have the qualified staff you need to be able to go out and do the work, and we are fortunate and blessed. I echo Commissioner McDaniel's compliments of our Public Works Department. They do an outstanding job with the resources they have, and they're out there in all weather conditions trying to make sure we can allow for safe passage of the motoring public. So that it's a tall task, but they do a great job making it all happen on a daily basis.
Right. Very, very true. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Stark, it was in the news just a week or so ago about the San Juan generating station and the county. It falls to the county to pass a resolution about the dismantling of that plant, now that the plans are not to make it continue on for generating power. And so talk to me a little bit about the intricacies of doing that, right? I mean, there's certainly some schedules that need to be met. It certainly is not an inexpensive process to dismantle and then restore the property around that plant, but that is kind of the next phase of what will happen at that location, correct?
That is correct. And the County Commission was presented with a plan from Public Service Company of New Mexico. They are acting as the primary decommissioning agent, representing all 9 owners of that plant. The previous commission, back in November of 2021, did adopt an ordinance, actually requiring that coal-fired electricity generating facilities upon retirement would be reclaimed and appropriately decommissioned, and so that's the ordinance by which the owners have to abide by. And so when the city of Farmington and Enchant determined it wasn't feasible to continue with the pursuit of continued operations, then that triggered upon closure of the plant September of this past year, that a plan would have to be submitted to the County Commission within 90 days. And we received that plan within 90 days, a very thorough plan from the owner's consulting engineering group that has broad experience in decommissioning coal-fired generation facilities. So that was good. The county then, per our ordinance, was required to hire a consulting engineer ourselves to make certain that we reviewed those plans, and somebody that had the same level of experience, and we were able to do that with Mountain West Consulting, who actually was involved with the decommissioning effort of the 3 units over at Four Corners Power Plant, units 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So somebody that already had local knowledge, very well versed, and happy to report that the plan that was presented was deemed to be acceptable, recommended to the County Commission for approval at the March 7th meeting, and it was so approved by the County Commission. So now you're going to start to see some work taking place out there. I believe Public Service Company of New Mexico is out for bids to find a qualified contractor to manage that process. It's expected to start work in June, anticipated to take anywhere from 2 to 4 years, depending upon scheduling and weather conditions and all the other factors that go into it. So,
right. Gotcha. And is that location, though, still a potential spot for replacement power by P&M? Do they still want to use maybe part of that property for what they had proposed for replacing the power plant?
Yeah, that's a great question. It actually came up at the meeting. Does P&M and the other owners that have an interest in that property have plans for reuse? As of right now, they do not, but the property will be returned back to the prevailing grade, and certainly would allow for that opportunity take place. There are some assets that are staying as part of the plan. So, for example, the two substations, or substation and switching station that exists out there. A lot of interest from not just projects that are being developed here locally to tie in to that infrastructure, because it provides you access to the entire U.S. Western electricity grid.
Yeah.
And so that's a valuable asset. In fact, one of the replacement solar projects now being owned and operated by D.E. Shaw Renewable Investments. Formerly, that project was a photosol project. They're in the works of and haven't started quite yet, but will be soon, a 200 megawatt solar field coupled with a 100 megawatt battery storage project that will tie into that exact substation on the property. And that we've been contacted, it feels like on a fairly regular basis, by projects even outside of our area that are eyeing that as a tie-in location, only because the difficulty that exists today in permitting new transmission lines.
Right.
It's a very expensive and a very time-consuming process. Can take upwards of 10 years or more. A great example of how long it can take and still not built is the SunZia project down south. That was planned to bring wind-generated power from eastern New Mexico across and down southern New Mexico and over to western Arizona. And that project has been in the works for a long, long time, and they still haven't put a shovel in the ground.
Interesting. That little NIMBY issues there, I suppose, right? Not in my backyard?
Well as some conflict with the White Sands Missile Range.
Well, that'll do it too.
A number of other environmental concerns that have popped up.
Gotcha.
So yes, when you get involved in a large multi-county, multi-state project, just expect for a long ride.
Right.
Long, slow ride.
Yes, but the difference here is that these lines are already in place, and the proximity to the substations or switching stations that you mentioned is what makes this area a little bit more, I guess, attractive for a big project like you're talking about then, right? Because these things are already in place.
Very much so. Very much so. And that's why we continue to receive a lot of interest in our area post retirement of the plant.
Exactly. And then would you mentioned some other assets would be staying. Most of the buildings are going to be gone, it sounds like to me, right? And that's part of this reclamation and kind of returning the land to what it looked like before those things were built. Is that kind of the ultimate goal? Correct.
All the structures that are not associated with the switching yard and the substation would come down to prevailing grade. Retention ponds that are on site today eventually, not immediately, because some of those may need to be reused short-term, would be decommissioned. And there's other environmental cleanup that's associated with the Shumway Arroyo and some of the other adjacent facilities. But yes, it's going to be a very comprehensive decommissioning project, and based upon the plans that we've received, our engineering consultants reviewed. What the county commission was concerned about a couple of years ago is we just didn't want to see a permanent eyesore on the landscape. We wanted the owners of the plant to do what a good Boy Scout would do, which is leave it better than you found it, and pick up all your trash when you're done. And they're committed to doing that, and we're glad to see that that's going to happen in San Juan County, and hopeful that the property can be reused for some other purpose. And so we are hopeful for that, and we'll wait to see what plans the owners may have.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. And does this extend to the coal mine as well, or is that a separate issue?
Yeah, it's separate of the coal mine. Federal law oversees that process, and so the federal government will be overseeing the closure of the mines, or mine rather. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also important to note our ordinance doesn't provide any oversight on the regulatory agencies that already have oversight on the San Juan generating station property. So that would be the New Mexico Environment Department, the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department at the state of New Mexico, as well as the federal EPA, all have permitting responsibilities or existing permits that would have to be cleaned up and made turned into full compliance with those existing permits.
Gotcha. Understood. I think I understand, but it's complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts. About, right? A lot of different agencies that have oversight. really our primary oversight was to make sure that we didn't have any structures that stayed up permanently, and that the plant there was talk about it being retired in place, and the county commission was really concerned about that possibility and wanted to make certain that didn't happen, and thus the need for the ordinance.
Right.
And we're happy to hear that there's going to be full compliance, and that the plan that's been provided is going to meet those needs.
Gotcha.
For the community.
And keep that property available, as you mentioned, for maybe other projects in the future.
Correct.
Whatever that becomes. So,
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. I think I understand it now.
Okay.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. My guest this morning from San Juan County, County Manager Mike Stark is here. Also, County Commissioner from District 2, Gary McDaniel is here visiting with me this morning about a number of different issues that are going on. I wanted to ask you a bit too, Mr. Stark, about Santa Fe and the state legislature. And I know we are, again, to the audience, we are talking about this on March the 9th. The program will air during spring break, and so things could be changing after we have our conversation. But there are some pieces of legislation that you are watching as to how they may impact operations here at San Juan County and others. And so, what are some of the things that you are watching, and of course, undetermined whether or not they've passed or not?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. It's a, needless to say, a hot topic. Whether it's a 60-day session, which we're currently in, or a 30-day session, we're always closely watching to see what new bills and potential laws, if they make it through the process,
Right.
that could either positively or negatively affect our area. And so we want to make sure we're advocating accordingly. There were 1,089 bills introduced in this session, so the deadline for introduction.
We only have time to talk about the first 1,000. I'm
Okay,
afraid.
all right. Well, I'll focus on those.
Okay.
But it's always interesting to know that citizens
Yes.
don't realize there's a large volume of bills that are introduced, and to make it through the process is actually pretty difficult. Given it has to either start in the House or Senate, and then concurrence on the other side, and then if there are amendments, it's got to go back, and then ultimately to the governor for signature, and she could veto any legislation that comes her way. So. At least with the current governor, or any governor that's in that role. So,
Right. Or lines from it, right? The
or
line
lines
item
from
veto,
it.
right? If they don't like a particular part of a legislation, then that may cause some changes.
Absolutely, it absolutely can. So, no, we watch that closely. One of the things the capital outlay bill, that's important because there's an opportunity for us to put forth priority projects within our area that will be beneficial to the community, and Commission did take action on putting forth such a list, so we're closely watching that bill. The details of that bill haven't been released yet, but they will be here soon as the session's coming to an end. Session ends on March 18th, Saturday at high noon, so a lot of action is going to take place between now and then.
Right. Just a few days from when this program is going to air, so I know folks will be watching.
That's right. Yeah, that'll be near the finish line. There's a reauthorization bill that reauthorizes or gives the opportunity for grants that may be near expiration or need to have an extension of time, and or if there's bills that need some or language changes, not bills, but project language changes, that can happen. And so we work closely as the fiscal agent for San Juan Regional Medical Center on a couple projects. They had a project that needed a little more time, so we've got a couple reauthorizations associated with that we want to make sure get to the finish line, and our legislators have once again made sure that's happened. So we always appreciate their support because they really do want to meet the needs of the community in San Juan County. We've had some legislation that there was some concern about trying to fix some tax pyramiding relative to professional services. And that's where you get the stacking of GRT tax for a service on top of another service that's being provided. So you get, in essence, a double taxation. There was also some changes to the liquor excise tax that we were closely watching because it could have an impact to distribution of funds we receive today for valuable programs like our DWI, 30-day DWI program, jail-based treatment program that we run.
Right.
And, here, interestingly enough, both of those separate bills didn't make it through committee. They were tabled, and then, here just recently an omnibus bill where you bring together a bunch of different bills and a lot of different interests was introduced through what's called a dummy bill process, which your viewers and listeners might find interesting, where you have bills that are set out as placeholders.
Interesting.
And
okay.
So when there's a need past the introduction period for bills, you can take a piece of legislation that may have stalled out and didn't have the right language or needed to add some things, and you can throw it into one of these bills, and then you've got a new bill that can take off and start running again. So we've been watching that because that has some impacts.
These issues are still alive, is what you're saying.
The issues are still alive,
through
but
this
they're
dummy bill, even though the original bills were long gone.
Correct, and it's all combined into one piece of legislation now. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it all fits or flows together, but that's a way by which you can get legislative support broadly from both sides of the aisle when you pack a bunch of different, almost disparate issues together. But that has great impact because you're talking about the bill having a reduction overall in gross receipts tax from the state's portion of GRT, and I think that probably would be welcomed by a lot of folks.
That would lower the overall tax that we all pay, correct?
It would, and pretty significant. I'm talking over 0.5% on top of what was already reduced previously in the last session. So that would be significant. You're seeing still have some language in there about the local excise. The liquor excise tax and how that would change and potentially be a slight increase from how it's done today, and the distribution of funding that comes to programs like ours. You've got changes to income tax rates for individuals. You've got changes to the corporate tax rate, and trying to mesh some issues that have lingered in the past there relative to kind of single sales factor.
Right.
So you have a lot of different issues in there. So we're watching that because that can morph quickly with amendments through the various committees. And then, other bills that, just maybe seem innocuous, but then all of a sudden you see that things get changed or amended, and oh my gosh, then you're like, wow, I didn't think that could be possible, that it could move that quickly. So we keep a close eye on things and work really closely with our legislators, because we want to make sure that we're, like I said, supporting and advocating as best we can on behalf of the citizens of San Juan County.
Sure, of course. But certainly it seems like in years like this, when there's an excess, it appears, of revenue flowing into our state, that the legislative process seems to be a little bit more friendly, for lack of a better term, maybe. If there's a lot more money then you're having to cut budgets and things like that. At least I think folks are fighting over more spending rather than having to cut back and send less out to communities and programs and things like that. Let me take off my rose-colored glasses and you tell me what I got right.
Well, I would generally agree with you. It would be interesting to get a legislator perspective on that because, when times are tough, everybody knows it, and they generally will withhold requests. But when times are good, the floodgates open on requests.
Lots of wish lists.
Then, you've got to go through and tell, folks, hey, we can work with this, we can't work with this. It becomes, I think, like I said, I'd be interested to see what our legislators would say, which is a better scenario by which to work from.
Right.
But yeah, I would say that it's good that we're talking about things that help everyday New Mexicans. Cutting the gross receipts tax. I know there's is part of that omnibus bill going back to it. Rebates back to New Mexicans through the bill.
Taxpayer rebates. Sure.
Those things don't happen when times are tough.
Exactly.
You're trying to find ways to cut back on those types of maybe increasing tax rates or reducing, obviously, benefits that may be received with certain programs. So I would say, generally speaking, it's easier to have more funding than less.
Right. And I know, as you have been telling us on previous visits here, that the county is in fairly stable financial shape. And so that's always, I think, a good thing for audiences to hear and understand it as well, that things look fairly stable at the moment. Yeah, things can change. No, things can change, and I can tell you, pre-COVID, it were some pretty trying times with where we were at and making sure we were providing the services our citizens expect, and that when you call 911, you're going to have a response from law enforcement and the fire department. Those are valuable, important, everyday services, and but now, yes, we've seen some additional funding come in from the federal government, state government. I mean, certainly as it relates to
to project-specific grants. That there's been a lot of opportunities there, and we're trying to get our arms around every one of those opportunities. Oftentimes, it can be a short grant application. Other times, it's a very long grant application. Regardless of what that might look like, we're always working to bring valuable dollars and resources here to the county, and new programs and infrastructure that's going to be beneficial long term.
Right. Well, I think when you say grant opportunities, I think competition, right? These are competitive opportunities too, right? So you've got to be in there to compete with the other entities, other counties perhaps that are also applying for that same dollar.
That's correct. Sometimes on a local level, if it's funding here recently, and we're waiting word on Gold King Mine settlement funding through the Office of Natural Resources Trustee, or a federal grant where you're competing with counties and municipalities nationwide. A very competitive process at times. So yeah, it just depends what the specifics of the grant agreement are, and whether or not it applies directly to you, whether or not you can meet the terms and conditions of a grant agreement. Just because the money's available doesn't mean it's the right fit for the grantor or the grantee. So we have to evaluate all those things, and you take each of those opportunities on a kind of case-by-case basis.
Right. Very true. Well, Mr. Stark, I appreciate you coming in. Thank you for being here this morning. Commissioner McDaniel, I want to come back to you and give you the last word today on our conversation about the legislature or legislation coming in, or whatever else you'd like to add in our final thoughts today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Scott. I was just going to add that we have a great group of legislators out there, and they represent San Juan County well. So, and I think everybody gets along pretty much. So that's good. I like that. So thank you for having us. Appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Thank you both for coming in, and it's great to hear from our county representatives and our county manager. So we always appreciate the support. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My guest this morning here on KSJE.